Hi, this is Dr. MJ coming to you from beautiful Boston, Massachusetts. This is the Women in Dentistry podcast, where we feature women in dentistry making waves and leading the industry through the next decade. I am your host, Dr. Mary Jane Hanlon, a former dental assistant, dental hygienist, and now dentist. I am very pleased to introduce you today to Dr. Seema Desai. Dr. Desai is a credentialed executive coach specializing in performance and well-being. Her coaching helps high-achieving, ambitious leaders go from stressed, overwhelmed, and frustrated to productive, effective, and fulfilled. Through her speaking, coaching, and workshops and online course, she empowers people to discover the inner peace that lives within so that they can unlock the transformational success they seek. Dr. Desai draws on her cultural background and experiences with the impostor phenomena, postpartum depression, and being a working mom to bring empathy and compassion to the people she serves. Dr. Desai is the author of the book Connected, Discovering Your Inner Guides, and co-host of the podcast Happy and Human. She recently served as co-president of the Austin chapter of Postpartum USA, a nonprofit organization aimed at creating learning equity for underserved children in India and globally. Though no longer seeing patients, Dr. Desai is a general dentist who practiced in the Austin area. Things that bring her joy are good cups of coffee, jazz music, tropical beaches, meditating, family time, and large slices of chocolate cake. A woman after my own heart. It is now my pleasure to bring you to my interview with Dr. Seema Desai. Seema, I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us and to share your story with the audience. If you will, please just jump into how you got into dentistry and what you're doing today, and let's just get started.
Well, thank you, first of all, for having me. I am thrilled to be here. How I got into dentistry, I mean, there's the long circuitous version, and then there's the Cliff's Notes. So I'll try to do a balance so that it's not.
It's okay. People really do want to hear your story.
The story. Well, one day I was walking uphill both ways, and no, just kidding.
I love it.
I grew up in a small town north of Dallas. As you can tell, I'm Indian American, and so my parents immigrated here from India in the 80s, and I was born and brought up here. And there was a very small Indian community where I grew up, but everybody except for my parents that I knew that was part of that community, they were all physicians. And I saw, yes, back in that day, right, how medicine was practiced in the 80s and 90s, it's very different now. But what I saw was a lot of glamorous vacations and a lot of big houses and, fancy jewelry and fancy cars. And also, I saw a lot of just grind. It was a lot of work. Mm-hmm. And it was almost like this badge of honor to be like, oh, excuse me, I'm on call, and, oh, excuse me, my beeper's going off. And for a long time, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I was just turned off by the field of medicine, just because I was like, who wants to be attached to this plastic thing that keeps beeping all the time? And, you're half here, you're half not. I mean, what is this? And, how much do I want the fancy car? Am I willing? Yeah. I kind of had told myself this story. And, long story short, was navigating what it meant to be a good Indian girl, like the running joke is doctor, lawyer, engineer. And so I just sort of settled with, well, I definitely am not cut out for law or engineering. So I guess doctor it is. But dentistry was honestly my way of rebelling. And saying, well, I'll be a doctor, but not quite in the way that everybody else says to be. And, I had a very different vision of what dentistry was. I was fortunate enough to have a healthy mouth and no caries or anything like that. So every time I went into the dentist, it was just a quick little visit, easy, get your prophy, get your fluoride, and then you're on your way. And I thought, I could do this. I could look cute and come into the office and I like this. This is perfect for me. And so I went in and I did the thing, and no one really tells you what it's really like, right? And everyone has their own experiences. I know it's different with different schools. Even within my own school, we were broken up into what we call group practices.
Mhm.
And so first 2 years everybody was together, but then third and fourth year, we were broken up into these basically mini practices, if you will. And your experience was wholly dependent on your attending doctors, right? Wholly, if the ones that had, well, my understanding of the situation was the ones that had female attendings, they were more relaxed, they were more practical in what it was that they were learning. Um, my attendings were both ex-army, old retired, sweet, sweet, sweet men, but we're from the army and we're going to do it this way.
Regiment.
And yes, very regimented, and honestly, not all that practical
Mhm.
in terms of, when you go out to an office now, you have to think about like, okay, am I really going to do, for example, we would do these buildups and we'd have to build in all the anatomy. Even though we were going to cut it down and prep it for a crown, we'd have to build it up for the anatomy. But we would have to do that all throughout versus other practices. They did it so that they could get the hang of the anatomy and stuff. But then after a while, it was like, okay, just make your crown prep and build up and, you know, do it the way you would do it if you were actually in a revenue producing office, right? It was just such a different experience. And so I don't know. I think the combination of me sort of not feeling like I had a full perspective on career options out there, um, navigating social norms and expectations and what I wanted for myself. And then on top of that, my experience in dentistry, I just sort of got out and I thought, okay, I'm finally made it. And, I think you probably have your own stories about what it was like to be a young doc out, and being a female and having all sorts of things happen simply because you're
Lots of
female.
stories along the way. Yes.
Lots of stories, lots of stories. And it got to the point where I was saying, well, I'm not really happy doing this, but it's because, I really wanted to be a mom anyway. So I'll just work part-time. I have this husband who is, you know, just now stepping into being a full-time medical doctor. Will be fine. Um, and I just sort of chalked it up to that. But, every position I worked at I was always blaming the office location, the office manager, the doctor who owned the practice, the patients who came in, whether we took Medicaid or we didn't take Medicaid, all of these things as to why I wasn't happy. And it all came to a head when I had my first child and I actually experienced postpartum depression and spent a lot of time denying it. But there's a lot of guilt there, right? There's guilt for having it all and still feeling like it's not enough. Did I mess up? Did I do something wrong? Why isn't this enough? But it led me, and honestly was one of the greatest gifts possible because it led me into doing a deep dive as to what it is that actually can make us truly happy, joyful, purposeful, effective, and loving life. So it's, I'm sure there's more questions to come, of course, and I can't wait to dive into all of it with you, but that's sort of the overview.
So explain a little bit about what you did with that and you're coaching now, correct?
Yeah, I'm a full-time, podcaster, speaker, coach. And I went into that was a hard shift, honestly, truly, because, I went to University of Texas Dental School in San Antonio. It's reputed to be one of, at the
It's one of the
time,
best ones.
the
Yeah.
best ones, right? Especially for general practice. I was noticing that with a lot of our colleagues. If you were trained up in the North, so many of us, they were going into specialties just because what they were telling me is that the confidence in practicing general dentistry just wasn't really built into how they were schooled. It was really geared towards funneling people towards specialties.
Mm.
I don't know that that's true, but that's kind of the impression that I got. But my school was I felt very, very able to handle a general practice. And so I never felt pushed to necessarily specialize. But, it just, you can only spend so many years blaming other things and other people before you start to realize, like, is there something I can do? Because nothing else is working. Like, no one else is picking up the slack here. No one else is changing this. And it started to manifest in really unhealthy ways in terms of I was just an angry mom, was unhappy with myself, and I would carry that guilt around. And then when it was time to go to work, I would be thinking about home. And when I was at home, I'd be thinking about work. And then you'd go out socially and you'd meet friends and who were practicing dentists full time. And I felt like I'd kind of have to justify my choices, and whether or not that certainly wasn't true, but that's how I felt in the moment. So yeah, it just took a long time for me to figure out, okay, what if I didn't wear the doctor hat at all? Like, it's one thing to go part-time, which is something I did. I didn't certainly phase out. And I say this from the point of it's a privilege, right? To be able to
Yes.
have someone support you through and say, you can walk away from this if you want. So I don't want to take that lightly. I know there are women out there who are single moms or they're on their own, and not to say that they can't go out, but I was able to do that with a little bit of more privilege.
Without as much fear.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I got coaching, honestly, to unstick myself, and it changed my life, changed completely how I saw life. I somehow managed to get confidence in who I am and what I think and how to say that without, worrying about how it's perceived, or my whole life opened up, honestly. And when the opportunity, COVID came and the pandemic happened, coaching school sort of fell into my lap. And I thought, let's try it out. Let's see what happens. And, kind of one thing after another, you start becoming this whole other person. And the opportunities that you see and that come your way change as a result. So now I work exclusively with, high achieving women, ambitious women who are looking to be better at work and at home without compromising their self-care, and helping them nurture themselves along the way. Because that really is the key to it all, is nurturing yourself so that you can be out and be better. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
I love this story because you took a chance to do something that most people would never take one step forward to do that, because they'd be afraid. And so congratulations on just living your truth and taking the first step, because we don't have to see where the road is going. We just have to look at the middle of the road, see that yellow line, and just keep driving. As long as we can see that yellow line, it's going to lead us somewhere. And I think sometimes the best path is to allow God to just take the lead and do what is supposed to be done, because we don't need to know how or why. When we get there, we'll figure it out. And those beautiful aha moments where you think, oh my gosh, how did I get here? I'm so lucky. They just unfold, just naturally.
Yeah, they really do. And it's so funny. I've said this 3 times today in separate conversations, and I think it's honestly the universe reminding me more than anything else, is we get so trapped in the how, right? Because we're proceduralists, right? I understand that
What's
if I
the
need
process?
to do,
Yep.
what's the process, right? If I need to do an MOD, I know exactly what setup I need. I know where to anesthetize. I know about how long it's going to take. I know, whether I'll need, I'll need 2 wedges, or I'll need this, or I'll need that. There's a set process, and there's hard, tangible metrics as to whether or not that was done to standard or not. Except for there is no standard for your life except for you.
Yeah.
And no one else can give you that. And they're all giving you feedback, but it's all based on their own biases, their own experiences, their own fears. And so you have to really learn to step into this idea of, who do I want to be, rather than focusing on the what and the how. Because the rest of it, once you focus on the who, essentially, I have found for myself at least, and my clients have said the same things, is really truly you step into being more connected with your intuition. And then once you're connected with that intuition, it's very difficult to question that, because you make decisions from this deep knowing, right? This deep faith that things are going to be just fine, however it works out to be.
Mhm.
And then all of the hows and the whos and the whats just start to fall into place that will support this vision of your future self.
So I have I do some, I still am coached to this day. I have coached and I am still being coached to this day. And the woman that is coaching me just said, okay, what's the next version going to be? And I said to her, what do you mean? And she said, you've already accomplished MJ version 1, version 2, whatever. What version do you want to manifest now? And I thought that was a brilliant question because, yeah, okay, I have accomplished a bunch of things that I've wanted to do in my life. What's the next thing that I want to, what's the next goal that I want to reach for? And I think I shared with you, I want to be able to not be in the chair anymore and just live a month here and a month there and be at home with my grandchildren sometimes, but be off in exploring the world, because I just have worked so hard my whole life. I haven't really taken much time to do that. I've seen more of the United States, and we were very fortunate to travel a lot with my daughter, who was an international skater. She skated on a nationally ranked skating team in the United States, and we did a lot of travel over in Europe. So we were very blessed to do that. But that's all done. And, I still want to go to other places that I didn't get a chance to go to when we were traveling for her. So I think that just the bottom line is, having a coach and having somebody challenge you and hold you accountable for what's next is a great way to keep on task and keep growing.
Yeah, it really truly is. Even as a coach, I have a coach.
Yep.
We get in our own way, and it's normal to succumb to limiting beliefs and blocks that we have, or we make things mean things that they don't necessarily mean. Like somebody says something to you about anything, what you said, how you dressed, or anything along those lines, and we sort of interpret that as, oh, I shouldn't have done it that way, or the next time if I do X, then Y will happen, and that's an outcome that I don't want, right? Without the guarantee, we don't know what the outcome will be, but it just prevents us from acting altogether. And then we never step into that next version of ourselves.
And the challenge with that is it's 100% perception through our lens, not through their lens, because they're probably not even thinking what we're thinking.
Oh yeah, there's no way.
No, exactly. So it's 100% perception. And how do we change that? Those paradigms that we grew up with as children, I've learned that the subconscious mind takes everything in as a child. And I actually just saw a video today of a 15-month-old who was playing and really engaged in doing some toys. And then an adult came in, and 2 adults had an argument in front of the child. And the child then just backed off and wouldn't play anymore, wasn't engaging. It was fear, right? Because they didn't understand why somebody would be having an argument, right? So all those things that we are not aware of that happened to us when we're children impact us forever unless we really work on those paradigms and change them.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. I think it's what is it, age 7?
Yeah.
Before age 7, we're just imbibing things in a whole different way. And so, but the good thing is now we know we can change that. It's never too late.
Well, and I am so happy about that, because I think the next generation, my grandchildren's generation, have parents that are much more emotionally intelligent and much more aware of how that impacts the child. And so I have to just brag a second about my daughter. I don't know where she got it, but she is a much better mom than I ever was. And I look at how she's bringing up my grandchildren, and I just applaud her every day because they are just great kids, very balanced, but oh, they know when mama says,
Yeah.
what's the bottom line, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I've always said to Courtney when she was younger, it's black and white with me, Courtney. If you do this, this is what's going to happen. So your choice, you can do that, but this is what's going to happen. And she never had to wonder or question in her mind what was going to happen. She knew because I always followed through. Her dad was a little bit mushy for her, so that that
I
was
hear that happens with little girls.
yeah, it is hard, but for me, it was black and white. You know, if you're going to do this, this is what's going to happen. It's your choice. And I never said she couldn't do it. She just chose not to do it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
So, oh my gosh, really exciting. So you're full-time and you're in Texas still?
I live in Austin.
That's awesome. So let me ask you some personal questions. Tell me one thing that people would be surprised to know about you.
One thing that has surprised people is that I haven't always been confident. If you had told me as a child that I would be co-hosting a podcast, I mean, if after you explained what a podcast was, because they didn't exist back then, but you know, getting on stages, speaking to people, and doing the things that I do now, I just don't know that I would have been able to believe it. I did not have the confidence. And I think that surprises people. And one thing that I hear is, but you make it look so easy.
Yeah.
You know, you make it look so easy to get up there. You make it so easy to have you know, even things like people who know us, you know, in our marriage, even like in my marriage, they'll say, well, it must be so easy. Well, because we worked at it, right? It was an intentional choice. The willingness to go forth and look dumb, be uncomfortable. And honestly, I'm still working through that. It's still, and it hits you at different levels, right? You get master at a certain level, and then you go up to the next level, or you try to make that next best version of yourself, and it shows up in different ways, and that's the work. But I guess that would be my first answer.
All right. So what do you think contributed to you developing your confidence along the way? How did you do it? So that, you know, if anybody in the audience is looking for ways to gain confidence, how did you go about that and gain it? And how'd you fight through the fear? You know, because that, I think that's the number one thing that holds most of us back.
Well, I'll answer the fear part first, because I think it's simple, not easy, I'll say. You know, in my book, I talk about fear like a puppy dog, right? When the doorbell rings, the dog barks because it wants to protect the family, the home itself. And when you say to this barking puppy dog who's very afraid, stop barking, you know, and you push it away from the door, or you put it in a room and shut the door, you try to, you know, just force that dog to be quiet, it doesn't work. Versus if you were to acknowledge that this dog is fearful, and, you know, if you have a small dog, you can pick it up. But, you know, just sort of be with those emotions, right? If it's okay, you know, like you see it's fine, like it's just the pizza guy, look, they're gone now, you know, that's really, I think, the most effective way to deal with any, what I call lower vibration emotion, fear, blame, shame, anger, guilt, worry, anxiety, you know, stress of any kind, is to really develop your ability to sit with it.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a good answer for confidence too, and fear around not being able to trust yourself. Is that's step one, is really getting comfortable being uncomfortable. You don't have to do anything. That's the easy part about that, is you don't have to go out and do as a result, but you do have to be with all of those sensations, right? For different people, it's different things. My palms start sweating. You know, that's how my body reacts. But just getting familiar with what your body reacts to and why and how, and maybe there's a specific circumstance that triggers it more than others, but just recognizing that fear and sitting with it and saying, it's okay. Like, I'm here. I see that fear. I feel that fear. I hear it. I'm also safe.
Mhm.
I'm also going to be okay. I also can figure it out, and that emotion tends to release then a little far easier than if you were to just bottle it up.
Great advice. I can tell you the number of times that I've gotten up in front of an audience, and I used to have to speak all the time when I was at Tufts. In the beginning, my heart would race so fast.
Mhm.
I thought it would come out of my chest.
Yeah.
And it's just over time and forcing yourself into situations where you have to do it, you
Mhm.
gain the confidence and you
Mhm.
realize, okay, it's not so bad. And I think the worst part is worrying about what somebody's thinking about you.
Mhm.
Don't care because you shouldn't.
Yeah. You can't possibly predict it. I mean,
Exactly.
there are so many times we don't see the world as it is. We see it as we are.
Through our
Right?
lens.
Yeah. I mean, if you're an angry person, the nicest person in the world could be up there talking to you, and you're going to want to find fault. You're going to want to, tear them down in one way or another. But you never find people who are truly happy and fulfilled and secure in their authenticity. They're never taking anybody down. They're never talking about them behind their back. If you stumble up there and you make a mistake, they're not thinking, "Oh, you suck," you
No,
know.
you're not. And it's
So
basically, so what? Who cares?
yeah,
You
you
know,
know.
you're showing up as your authentic self. And yeah, we all just bobble it sometimes, right?
Yeah.
I heard a good one today. Inside every single one of us is a hot mess. And
Oh yeah.
sometimes it just shows up and you can't do anything about it. And you just got to move on. Right?
Yeah. Another day, another time. Yeah,
That's right.
it's
That's right.
so
Okay.
true.
Yeah. What's the single best piece of advice you've ever been given?
To make peace within yourself, to create that
Um,
peace. Not even make it, to just tap into it because it already is there.
right.
We've just cut ourselves off from it.
Just so the audience understands, do you do meditation to connect? How have you made peace with yourself? Can you give us some examples?
Lots of things. I love going outside and being in the sun when the weather permits. Taking my walk, getting my steps in, getting on my yoga mat. Um, yeah, meditating and breathing. And it doesn't, when I say meditation, especially for most people, they think that it means you're sitting for hours and hours and chanting, different things and all of this stuff. And really, truly, what it means is just being present. And
Yeah.
that could mean me watching, every morning there's these two squirrels that run around up and down my fence, and I just watch them. I that's it. I just watch them run back and forth. Um, I notice, because of the work that I have done on myself, am more quick to notice when I am feeling those lower energy emotions. And so I will turn to my breath. Your breath is such a great marker of where you're at, right? If you're breathing fast, if you're holding your breath, if your breath is shallow, if you're not breathing in through your diaphragm, those are all great clues to tell you, hey, we need to release a little here. We need to step into more, calming, more present breaths. And that takes a few seconds, right? You don't need an app for it to just watch yourself breathe. You don't need a phone. You don't need your best friend. You don't need a glass of wine. You don't need that new Prada bag. It's just a matter of being present with yourself.
And aware that that's what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just awareness. I find that just being aware of where I am and what I'm doing, it helps me to stay in the present moment.
Yeah. And it's so powerful because, as you and I both have said on this podcast in various ways, when you're aware, when you're present, it's difficult to see conflict in the same way, right? You just won't see it, or you'll see it with more empathy and compassion.
Yeah.
Like I'll give you an example. Yesterday, we have spent all summer, we've gone to London, we've gone to Paris, we saw the French Open, we saw Novak Djokovic play an incredible 5-setter match. We did high tea. We did all of these things. We came back, we saw family all over the country, came back, we're at the beach, spent a glorious few days at the beach, came back. Now the kids are about to start school and my son's sitting there with me. And he says, I just feel like we really didn't do much in the summer. And there's a previous version of me that would have lost my stuff. Like I would have lost my lid. But what I heard him say was, there's something happening emotionally for me and it's unresolved. And so I don't know what it is, but there's something here that I haven't addressed. Right.
And how old is he?
He's 13, almost 12 and a half. He's headed into 7th grade.
Yeah, it's a tough time.
It's a tough time, right? Yeah. So for all I know, he could be just feeling nerves about school. And maybe he's thinking to himself, but again, their brains, as you know, are mush at that age. They just, it's an illusion that they're older and they can talk and they have all these beautiful insights, but really, truly, they're still trying to fit it all together still. Yeah. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, well, maybe there's a friend that he just hasn't been able to connect with outside of school. And now we're headed back. Maybe he's not sure where he stands with his friend because it's been 3 months. Like, who knows? Right. And so for me to be able to take that and be at peace with myself, knowing that we did all of these things and there was nothing that I did that could have, made that true, right? That we didn't do anything.
Right.
Going into that, well, tell me what that means to you. Well, how would you know when we would have done that thing? Right. Like how would you be feeling differently right now? Mm-hmm. And at the end of it, he's like, I guess really nothing. I think I'm just sad that summer's over and I'm a little nervous about school starting.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
There you go. Right.
Yeah. And just having that conversation and not having somebody judge. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, what a great thing you're doing for your child, because what I have learned is it takes 7 whys to get to an answer. Mm-hmm. You have to keep asking why. Mm-hmm. Well, why do you think that? What do you mean by that? And it just gets down, and it's usually by the 7th layer, mm-hmm. and you can track it. If you really wanted to do an experiment on it, you can track it. And usually by the 7th question, mm-hmm. people get to it. And mm-hmm. this is what I'm upset about, or this is what I'm worried about, or this is my concern. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't take much, but you can't get that why mm-hmm. if you are irritated inside, right? Like you cannot create that external resolution. I couldn't have done that if I were in my own head and my own judgment of him. And if I was like, oh, he's so ungrateful. What do you mean we haven't done anything? What do you mean we haven't this? Like, he was never going to even feel safe enough to physiologically process what was happening for him, much less feel safe enough to communicate that to me. So, I mean, it all starts with ourselves.
I agree. And I think for any of the moms out there, great advice from you to take that time and instead of blowing a gasket, for lack of a better word, right? But that's what we do sometimes. Mm-hmm. Instead of blowing a gasket, take a step back and ask the questions, ask the question, try to drill down and find out what's really bothering them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's awesome. Is there anybody in dentistry who inspires you?
It's been so long since I've picked up a handpiece. I feel.
So how long has it been? How long has it really been?
Gosh. Well, I did my last procedure, I think, in the summer of 2019.
Wow.
And my whole goal was, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. I really thought I was going to go get yoga teacher certified. I tell people all the time, yoga saved my life. I was in a really cold, dark place before when I had my first kid, and it really did help me. And it's just been a passion of mine ever since. And so I thought that was what I was going to do. So I was like, I'll just take a few months, right? I'll figure it out. And then the pandemic happened, and things just sort of took a different course. But I remember, just honestly, anytime I see a female dentist or a physician from, because it sounds like I might be more along your daughter's age, your daughter's generation.
Yeah.
And so for me, when I see women in the generation ahead where you are, I'm just filled with so much gratitude. And honestly, just such deep respect, because it was difficult enough going through it because I graduated in 2008, but to have gone through it then, I remember my attendings had all sorts of stories about how they would get remarks from their dental school peers and the attendings, and why aren't you in the kitchen barefoot and pregnant? That's where you belong. All sorts of stuff from the patients. I mean, I've had definitely some unwanted advances and lewd remarks made about how I look, and anything and everything. But I'm sure it was just far, far more so with this previous generation. So that's really it.
It was difficult at times, for sure.
Yeah.
And I'll just share a quick story that just popped into my mind. I remember I was going to buy a condo in a condo building. The first one I had was only 600 square feet, and I needed a little bit more space. So I went to purchase this, and I was told that I needed to have every owner of the association sign off on it. And there was a dentist there, and he would not sign off. And he literally would follow my patient. I did finally get approval, because he was the only one that wouldn't sign it. And he literally would follow my patients out into the parking lot and tell them that I was either not a great dentist, or you should come to see me. It was the wildest thing, because I've never felt that way. I always feel like there's enough business to go around. So I've never felt threatened. He had his practice, I had my practice. It's not a big deal. I was established at that point, so I never felt worried about it. He had his, I had mine, and we just happened to practice next door. Why don't we collaborate together, right? Like,
right.
I can cover your vacation, you can cover my vacation. But it never got that way. It was more that he was concerned about me impinging on his practice, and kind of sad, but that's the way it used to be. And I'll share another story. Dentistry in every other country but the United States is always led by women and not men. The only country that is led with men in dentistry is the United States.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I really didn't know that.
Yeah. India, Iran, Iraq, Brazil, it's mostly women that have been in the profession for a really long time. Now, there are men in it, of course, but it's predominantly women. And when I left Tufts, we were finally at 72% female. So, we're heading in that direction, but it has taken a long time.
Yeah. Wow, that's incredible. I had no idea.
Yeah. So who's made the biggest impact on your life? Is there one person?
I can't
or
say
a
that
couple?
I can't say that it's one or two. I will say my kids honestly have been, without them, I don't think that I would have invested in myself, right? Like, we normalize the grind. We normalize just getting through the day, right? Like, that's what's supposed to happen. You're not supposed to enjoy the work week. You're supposed to wait till the weekend, crack open your glass of wine, and maybe go out to a fancy dinner. That's what you do. And think that that's okay. And you kind of settle for subpar with your marriage, and you settle for subpar with your life. But for me, when I started yelling at my kids and really showing up as a mom that I would see it in their eyes that it was sad They're just little kids, right?
Right.
And it really, without them, I don't think I would have invested in myself and invested in coaching, invested in, you know, reading these different books and thinking about things different ways and all of this stuff. It was really for them that I thought, like, it's one thing for me to screw up my own life, but I don't need to screw up somebody else's.
Oh my gosh. Just great advice.
Yeah.
You got to
Yeah.
take time for yourself, and you got to learn. One of the things I always say is, if I'm not growing, I'm dying.
Mm.
Because when you plant a flower, it grows, right?
Mhm.
When you plant a
Mhm.
seed, it grows. And
Mhm.
the expectation is you're constantly planting seeds
Mhm.
so that they'll grow and they'll continue to move you forward on the path. And if you're not planting those seeds, and if you're not growing, if you're not pushing yourself to do something that you might find difficult or whatever the case may be, but if you're not growing, you are dying. And
Yeah.
companies do the same thing. Polaroid didn't pay attention to the writing on the wall. I think
Mhm.
dental schools and colleges across the country, across the world, are not paying attention.
Mhm.
People are not going to be paying this kind of money for education. And if they don't start changing, things are going to crumble around them.
Yeah, so true. Well, at least I would say I agree with it, is even, and you see it even in your basic movies, right? Like you have it all. And you probably have, we've all met women like this, right? Where you've heard a story about, well, I had it all,
Mm-hmm.
but like you can't, when you settle for, even if it is wonderful, right? Even if it is this big fancy house and the big fancy car and traditional, I would say, untrue reflections of what success, or definitions of what success is, um, it starts to get a little lonely. It starts to get a little empty. It starts to feel meaningless. And then you're thinking, well, what good is all of this if I'm
Right.
not feeling that fulfillment from rising to a challenge and overcoming it.
Mm-hmm. It has to be in your heart.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you filter everything through your heart, and is this good for me? Is this where I need to go? And just listen,
Mm-hmm.
you'll hear the answer. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times we just don't listen,
Yeah.
which is too bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So have you ever had an aha moment when you
Mhm.
realize you're doing exactly what you were supposed to do, especially given your coaching and your transition out of your career?
Tons of aha moments.
I bet.
Tons of aha moments. Really, truly. I helped a woman leave a job that didn't, to your point, right, wasn't growing anymore. She wasn't growing anymore, and she, do I take the security, or do I, go for a different job where I don't know how it's going to happen? I might hate it, but at least here I have the opportunity to grow and to do things like that, right? To help these women really make a decision for themselves from a place of confidence and trust. To witness that, it just feels so good in my body. Um, it's really that, okay, I'm not making this decision for them, but I'm able to hold the space so that they can make the decision for them. And, she's thriving now in this new position.
You made a
It's
difference
really
in
great. We
somebody's
made
life.
it, yeah. And all we did was have a conversation in a way that she could hear her own wisdom,
Mm-hmm.
you know. Tons of aha moments, like even the moment I was describing with my son, just that recognition of, okay, well, I'm going to celebrate this time that I didn't blow a gasket, because there are days,
Exactly.
of course, we're human. There are going to be days where I'm going to be more irritable, or I'm going to, snap at him, and I don't want to. But there are these aha moments of like, oh, I can handle this. I know what to do, and we can have this beautiful outcome that we can create together. Happy and Human podcast has been so wonderful in that way too. We've had some amazing guests come on and share their insights as to what it means to share their expertise, and how they got to that level of expertise and making an impact in the world so beautifully and so uniquely. it's just it's so fulfilling.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Nothing better than that feedback that you have helped somebody, and
Yeah.
the ripple effect across the world. Obviously, that vibrational effect is helping the world heal, right? And become
Yeah.
better and grow. It's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, is there any challenge that you have faced that was fairly difficult that you're really proud of that you overcame?
I mean, I will say I did have, as I mentioned, some postpartum depression with my first child. It was a really cold place. Um, Having the courage to, I can't remember if we were recording when you said this, but to just know to follow the line on the road, like just to not know what's coming ahead or behind you, but just to keep going.
Mhm.
Um, and honestly, to take that challenge and say, I'm not going to just get through this, but how can I become not an angry mom? How can I become a more connected mother? How can I actually have the confidence to ask for what I want at work, which is to be home by 3 o'clock so that
Right.
I can pick my kids up and I'm able to have time to make dinner. Like having that confidence and learning for myself, that I'm really, especially compared to when I look at how I was as a little girl, very timid, very shy, don't rock the boat. Um, it's really remarkable to see how
Now,
far
if
I've
you
come.
don't mind me asking, because I think it might be helpful for somebody in the audience,
Mhm.
what did it feel like to go? I've been very fortunate. I never experienced postpartum depression, but I know it happens a lot. So, what does it feel like, and how did you know? And did you ask for help?
So that's an interesting question because I mean, as I mentioned, my husband also is in medicine.
Hmm.
And so I think for both of us, it just came off as that I was very controlling about things like if I were supposed to feed the baby every 3 hours, it had to be 3 hours within a couple of
Exactly.
minutes. Yeah.
Mhm.
Like if it was three and I was supposed to, if I was supposed to feed him at 3 and it was 3:15, I would not be doing well. Just needing this control, needing to be, and then not being able to handle when for whatever reason it became 3:15 or 3:30, and then just completely not having the will to think for myself like, okay, well, what I need to eat something. I
Hmm.
need to, and part of that is just our families did the best that they could with supporting us, given
Sure.
our all of our circumstances and everything. And but when you're raising a kid on your own with a husband who's gone a lot,
Hmm.
you're kind of setting yourself up. And so that was it was just lonely. I was socially isolated. I the physical environment we were transitioning from moving different cities. And so we were in this apartment until we could find a home that we felt like we could call home. And even the physical environment, just not, yeah. Oh yeah. Like there was no space for anything. It was cold. It was drafty. We had really loud upstairs neighbors, like everything. My nerves just felt like I was on edge
All
and
the time.
all the time. And I felt this weight that I didn't know was weight all the time on
Mhm.
me. And when I told my husband about it, I remember because he would, especially when my son was first born and he would wake me up when he was home and he'd say, it's time to feed him. We need to feed him. I was so tired. It would feel like I was coming out of anesthesia, I would imagine, right?
Yeah.
Like I couldn't, there's a term for it and it's escaping my brain. But where I could hear everything, I could hear him crying, I could hear my husband, I could hear the TV, but I couldn't move. I had like vocal paralysis. I
Uh,
just,
yeah. Oh, it was almost there. It was right on the tip of my tongue. Sorry.
no, it's okay. I'll have to look it up now later, but it was just so exhausting all the
Mm.
time. And I remember telling my husband, I feel so tired and I'm such a bad mom. Like I'm awful at this and I don't deserve this. And things along those lines. And he just you know, we didn't know. He didn't know, even though we both, were in the medical field. We just, it was easier to deny it.
Yeah.
And he was trying to be supportive. Like when he was home, he was helping me do laundry. He was helping do dishes. He was helping to cook. He would do everything he could to support me. But he can't get inside my head. He
No.
can't,
Mm.
he can't feel the negative thoughts and hear the negative thoughts. That's work that I had to do.
Right.
And so I don't think we really realized that I was depressed until honestly I was out of it. And then I started reading and hearing accounts from other women. I was like, oh, that's likely what that was. It was
Yeah.
just so heavy. It was so hard to shake. And the way I got out of it was starting out with yoga and starting out. I didn't get help in the way that I probably should have. If, I would highly, if I would go back, I wouldn't say I would change my story because then I wouldn't be
No,
having the
no.
life that I have now. But I would have, yeah, definitely therapy is something that would have been probably highly, highly, highly beneficial.
I haven't shared this too much with too many people, but it came up in a conversation not too long ago. And during COVID, that transition was really difficult, of course. And running the third largest dental school in the country, and trying to make sure that I knew all the rules and that we had everybody safe in the environment that we're in, and all the students could, do some studying at home, but, stay on top of their lab work and figure out, when we're going to bring patients back in. All of that was so overwhelming. I remember I stopped exercising, and I've exercised almost every day my entire life. And looking back on it, I realized I was depressed because I just felt like this huge weight on me because, I was worried about everybody staying safe and making sure, ultimately it was up to me and my team to make sure that everybody and so of course they're looking to me as their leader to set the parameters and give them, jobs to do and things that they needed to get done. And everything worked out fine. But I remember thinking and looking back and reflecting back, and only after I got out of it, I realized that I had gone through some kind of depression and overwhelming anxiety over, am I going to be able to do this? Am I going to be able to get through this? Because, there was a lot going on at the school at the time and transition to a new dean. And so there was just power struggles everywhere, and it just was just challenging. So I think that depression can come upon us and we don't even know that it's depression. So if this helps one person out there, I think both of us will be really happy.
Oh my gosh.
It doesn't come with a sign. You don't know that you're depressed, but if you are and you've stopped doing things that you normally have been doing, that could be a red flag. I look back and I say that should have been my red flag.
Right. Absolutely. I think, when you stop doing the things that you love or stop enjoying the things that you enjoy, that's a sure sign, I think, to, not necessarily that you're depressed. I mean, we can't make that diagnosis, but at least to say, okay, hey, what's going on here? There needs to be something. Yeah.
I agree. So do you have a guilty pleasure or a secret dream that you'd like to share with the audience?
I love chocolate. I just love it to pieces. And if I could have chocolate all day long, I probably would.
I think most of us are right there with you.
Yeah. I used to be such a big sweet tooth that it's tapered off a little bit, but I still enjoy my sweets and desserts. It has to be just really good though. I won't settle for anything, but chocolate's just like my weak spot.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I've had somebody say, oh, hands down ice cream. I could sit down and eat a half a gallon of ice cream. And I'm like, really? Oh yeah, no problem.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
No problem. So today, when you feel stressed, how do you manage it? Do you have a checklist in your mind that you go through just to kind of like keep yourself under control so that cortisol doesn't go out of control?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think having a routine or a ritual helps. Certain things that you just exercise constraint from as well. So what I mean by that is in the morning, I wake up, I have a cup of hot water, and I go for a walk. I meditate. If I can, depending on time, I'll, try to get my workout in then. And if not, I'll do it, but in the morning, right? If the kids are around and I need to get them to school, then I'll wait till they come back. Excuse me, I
After
will
you come
wait
back.
till after I come back, but I'll try to get that in. Things like constraining, like I'm not going to watch TV past a certain time.
Yeah.
I'm not going to watch the news because it's not helping me stay grounded in my nervous system. All of those things are, things like I have tapered off alcohol, because I find that more often than not, it just makes me feel worse the next day. And then I'm, cursing myself for having had the alcohol. And then I didn't, even if I've had just a single glass of wine, I just can't perform as well. And so there's fail safes like that I put into place. And the big thing, and I think honestly, what's very different with my coaching versus others, that what they may offer is, of course, it's a lot of mindset work, which is what coaching is, right? It's about tapping into your intuition and helping you make those decisions that you want to make for yourselves. But what I really, really like to focus on is, how is my breath and how is my body in this moment? And I've developed, especially with the yoga, more attunement to things of like, oh, my chest feels heavy, or my stomach feels a little bit of, whatever going on, or I might notice, I've got my forehead crunched, or I'm pushing my tongue up against the linguals of my teeth, or whatever it may be. Posture, right? Just really focusing on, oh, my body's in this position. Let me see if I can shift out of that. And usually that will sort of help to start dusting off the cobwebs and saying like, okay, all right, like, let me turn to my breath. Let me make my exhales longer than my inhales. So that I can get back from the sympathetic to the parasympathetic state and be in that rest and digest mode to think clearly.
Very good. Very good. How about mantra or a motto that you live by?
Inner peace creates outer peace.
Love it. Love it.
favorite.
Very simple, very direct, and very powerful.
Thank you. Yeah, it's one of my favorites. And it's honestly, when I am breathing, when I am in stress, it's something that I repeatedly kind of say back to myself, and that kind of helps me know what to do so that I can get back to that place of equilibrium.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. All right. Reflecting back to your 12-year-old self, what advice would you give her today?
Trust yourself. Just trust yourself. It's going to be more than fine especially if you trust yourself.
Yeah. What about a new person coming into the field of dentistry? Anything that you want to share with them?
I would say the same thing. Trust yourself, and really find ways to like yourself. Find ways to unconditionally love yourself. And that will create that inner peace that you need to give you the clarity to see things really from a bigger perspective, and make decisions based on data, based on your own intuition versus an assumption that's often false.
Now, one question I failed to ask you, did you have any repercussions for leaving the practice from family or friends or anything?
Not to my face. I'm sure people said things. I don't think really a lot of my family members even understand what I do, but not to my face, which was probably a good thing. Yeah.
Because you don't want to get in the muck. Who cares?
No, you don't. And I think it would have really shaken my confidence even more. It really would have made me question. And I think that's why it took me so long to actually leave. Because it's, look, like if you love the work, you love the dentistry, you love reading about it, going to the conferences, working on the patients in that way, and you've started to stop loving it, then we're kind of back in this, like, take a look around and see what's going on. For me, I think I liked it, but I never was really passionate about it. And so what I liked was the helping people part of it, right? What I liked was honestly the ego of it. Like, oh, you're a doctor and you're in charge. And, I, as a child, didn't have very much control over what happened around me. And so this was probably some sort of manifestation of, like, I'm the one in charge, which is not a good place to be, right? And not honestly, um, leaving that part of your identity after you work so many years, and not everyone gets to get into dental school and all of those
Right.
things, right? But reconciling that was not easy, but I think it would have taken a lot longer, even longer than it did, had I heard those voices outside of mine.
Yeah, one of the thoughts that I had when you're talking about your postpartum depression, and you're talking about control, I find in my life when I have to control something, it's because I feel out of control somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
So another piece of my life or another piece of something that, I might be working towards or whatever, I can't seem to get a grasp on it or make progress towards it. So I'm feeling out of control in that area. So I have to control something else in order to make myself feel better. So yeah. And going back to what you just said, it really doesn't matter what anybody thinks as long as you're happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the bottom line. We have to find our happiness. It's not anybody else's. It's not our parents' happiness, for us to do X, Y, and Z. If that's not your calling, that's not your calling. Do something else. I remember when I told my parents I wanted to be a dentist, they're like, really? Like, nobody in my family was a dentist. So where did I come up with this?
Yeah.
But I knew at a very young age. I was 14 years old and I came home and told my parents, I'm going to be a dentist. Okay. All right.
That's
Anyway,
incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, I was very fortunate. I was lucky that I knew. I was and I do reflect back and say, I'm so happy I knew that that's what I wanted to do. Now, last question, 2 parts. How do you define success?
Can I sleep at night? Am I, really truly, have I connected with my kids? Have I lived today in a way that has potentially helped somebody else, in a way that didn't tax me, right? But really was from a genuine place of offering, not, oh, sure, I'll drive you to the doctor because I have to, or I'll go to your party because I have to.
Right.
But really, truly, have I allowed some space? Successes to me, or you're able to have time to move your body and honor your body? Do you have time to exercise? Do you have time to eat correctly? And correctly, I mean, in a way that serves, not that there's a right or a wrong, right? Those are all definitions of success.
Absolutely. Now, last question. Do you feel, because the emotional part of it is important, do you feel successful?
I feel incredibly fulfilled and successful most of the time. There's always going to be times where, especially as you reach for a new goal, you're going to creep up and say, well, maybe not, maybe I'm, maybe this, maybe that. But I think that the reason I do feel successful is because I'm able to look at my life and say, oh my gosh, look at all the amazing things. And I'll add to that the definition of success is, the goal isn't achieving the thing. Is it, are you learning, right? Did you learn from trying to do it? And so, by that definition, it's difficult to not feel fulfilled in that way.
I call that the ebb and flow of life, right? Sometimes you're in the ebb, sometimes you're in the flow. Flow is so easy. Ebbs can be a little bit challenging, right?
Yeah.
And how are you facing it is 100% of everything. if you're facing it with resistance, what you resist persists. I mean, it just is going to just continue to get negative, 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 and that's going to just build up the burden. So go with the ebb, know that the flow is coming, and just know that this too shall pass. There will be a time you get on the other side.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that was just so beautiful. Talk about simple and powerful and vivid.
That's how we all think, right? In pictures.
Yeah.
So I try very hard to try and associate that so that I remember, what to concentrate on. And okay, it's an ebb time.
Yeah.
Like I shared with you earlier, today's a little bit of a challenging day for the audience.
Yeah.
I have a brand new house that I just built, and I had my shower door smash. Like just come tumbling down into 5 gazillion pieces. Scared the daylights out of me. I was home working and didn't know what the crash was. It just was overwhelming. And then once I finished picking that up, a little chipmunk got into my pantry. So I'm having to figure out how to do that ebb. Okay. So in going back to our conversation earlier, in my previous life, I'd go down that negative Nelly path and say, why is this happening? And blah, blah, blah. Right. But then I realized, and I just started laughing at myself. I'm like, oh my gosh, you cannot make this shit up. Sorry, everybody. I didn't mean to, but you just can't make it up, right? It's like hysterical. It's like, okay, this happened today. Tomorrow will be a new day. And so,
yeah, sometimes I have to remind myself, this is when I'm feeling angry or sad or frustrated, or it just feels sticky. Those are all human emotions, just like happy and sad. I mean, happy and joyful and inspired and all of those things. And you don't look at the night sky and get angry that it's night. Like, it'll pass, right? You don't look at the sun and be angry that it's morning time. It's going to pass. And I think Rudyard Kipling said it beautifully too, where he said something along the lines of triumph in disaster, and to learn to treat these two imposters in the same way.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah.
What a great way to end the show. So if somebody would like to get coaching from you, where can they find you?
So my website is drseemadesai.com, DR, and then seemadesai.com. And then I'm also on LinkedIn and Instagram as well. One thing I would like to say too is a couple of things. Are you okay with me sharing
Absolutely.
what my offers are?
Go ahead, share away.
So I have a course, it's called Calm in the Chaos. And in the matter of a couple of days, the whole goal of the course is to help you hit the pause button, tune into your breath, get that clarity and inner peace that you need to then go ahead and make decisions with confidence and in a way that feels aligned and good to you. So it's a quick course. There's guided sessions through there, 5, 10, and 2 minutes long, that you can use as a resource to come back to. And that's available on my website. If you want to work one-on-one with me as a coach, we can schedule that also on my website. And then the biggest thing I'm excited about right now is I'm actually hosting my first ever retreat.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you. I'm so thrilled. It's going to be in Austin, October 23rd through 26th. So Wednesday evening through Saturday morning. And I'm focusing on women who are in the small business world, right? So if you own your own dental practice, this is going to be for you. We're going to be working on just taking intentional rest, learning to understand our bodies and our breath, and to find that calm in the chaos. We'll be doing some group coaching. We'll be doing some meaningful connection with other women who are in similar situations, and navigating how to be better at work and at home while honoring that well-being in the process. And so I'm super, super excited about it. And you can learn more about that on my website as well.
Sounds amazing. I hope you'll do a couple of sessions just in case the podcast comes out after October, but I hope you have the sessions on the website.
Yeah. Well, we can edit that part out too. If you feel like it's going to come out after October, we can.
I'm already into December already. So.
Okay.
I think it's great that you're announcing it. So we'll just leave it that way.
Yeah. Awesome.
I can't thank you enough, Seema, for being with me today. We obviously are aligned on a lot of ideas and thoughts, thinking the same way. And it's been really nice to have somebody come on the show that is more on a spiritual journey that I can align with, because, we're talking things that not everybody pays attention to. So I hope somebody opens their mind today and does start to understand that, there's a spiritual side of things, and we do have to take care of ourselves.
So well said. Thank you for having me on the show. It was such a fun episode for me to record, and I really hope, listeners, that it's benefited you.
Awesome. Me too. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for listening to the Women in Dentistry podcast with Dr. MJ Hanlon. If you like our show and want to know more about us, check out our website, thewomenindentistry.com, or please leave us a review on iTunes. Join us for our next episode as we bring you another amazing woman leading the way for the next generation.